Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Jeff Mendelson, and this is the One Big Tip podcast. You know, there's something I want to talk to you guys about. Public speaking is a necessary evil in today's business world. Not everyone is at ease in front of a large or even small audience, on stage, in video Zoom calls, or even lives or podcasts like this one. What else can you do besides picture everyone in the audience naked? Well, Robin Sachs has the answer. Robin is a public speaking coach and author who has worked with small businesses and Fortune 500 companies to teach people techniques to give them the confidence they need to get in front of an audience and share their genius. By naming the negative voice in your head, Robin believes it's easier to start to separate it from the positive and supportive ideas that can get drowned out by self-doubt. So this is going to be a really interesting discussion today. Robin, thank you so much for joining me and welcome to the show.
Jeff, thank you. Thanks so much for the invite to share. Looking forward to sharing a couple of actionable things for everybody listening.
I love it. I love it. So I want to start this out, just to give people an idea of who you are, what makes you amazing, and how did you step into this?
So it's because as we're looking forward, we don't often see how we got from A to B. But as we look back, it makes perfect sense because we never got from A to B. We actually got from A to B to C to D to E to F, and now we're at G. And so looking back, there were a couple of things that were always common denominators in my life. And the way that I stepped into what I do now and what I've done for about 16, 17 years now, which is help people have more confidence and less stress when they're speaking, is back when I was in the television news industry. So I spent a number of years in television news until I came to my senses and ran screaming from that industry by choice. But toward the end of my tenure in that business, I had been on air. And so I was often asked in the area to come MC an event or something like that, or introduce a conference. And one of the things that I started doing, just because I was, from a value standpoint, news was beginning to rub me the wrong way at that point. And I think I was trying to keep my sanity, is I would talk to the audience about, let me tell you some secrets about news and the news industry. And one of the secrets, for example, was don't ever listen to what they say, only listen to what they don't say. And so, for example, the weather forecaster will always tell you there's a 20% chance of rain. He or she will never say there's an 80% chance of sun. The anchor at the desk will always say there's a 10% unemployment rate today. They'll never say today we have 90% employment, right? The idea is we are surrounded by what is going wrong or what could go wrong, even if it's that much of the entire story. And so that type of thinking kind of creeps in and takes over. And it's not just when you're watching a newscast, but it actually takes over how you look at and think about everything. And that's why oftentimes it feels as if we're always looking for what's going wrong, even though there might be a dozen things going right. Think about a day where 10 things go perfectly fine just as you planned, and one thing goes haywire. What's the thing that you focus on and tell everybody about? The one thing that went wrong. We get so stuck on that negativity. It's amazing, right? And so what I started to realize was that every time I talk about that type of stuff, kind of in a humorous bent, but it's the truth, I would have a dozen people come up afterwards and say, I never looked at it that way. That like changes things in my life, because you're right. I'm always looking at that side and I'm only giving myself half the story. There's another half of the story I'm not bringing into the mix. And if I brought in the entire story, this side doesn't seem as bad. It's easier to do than I'm thinking. So as I started to realize that, I thought, whoa, well, that's sort of how my brain works. That's how I think. But we don't always realize that we do things and not everyone does those things that way. And that could be a value that someone else could maybe use. And so I started thinking about, well, what do I do with that? How do I help people think differently? How do I help people and create a business? How do I monetize helping people think differently? It was like, what does that even look like? So long story short, moved back to Cleveland because I had been traveling around the country with jobs for a little while. And for a year, I jumped into every possible thing I could get in front of an audience for. So if you could get 10 people in a room, if it was a chamber meeting, if it was whatever, some networking thing, get me in front of people and let me just start talking about this stuff and sharing. And it'll start to tell me what it looks like. Because one, I'll be able to get it out in a way where I can see what resonates with people, what doesn't, right? It's kind of like you imagine a stand-up comedian. I have 100 jokes. I'm going to get on stage at a bunch of comedy clubs, that nobody's going to be at really. So I can find the 10 that are going to become the biggies in my act, right? And after about a year of just figuring out what this looks like and paying attention to what people were responding to, I got a phone call one day that said, we want you to come speak at our conference. Somebody in our organization saw you. What do you charge? We want you to go to Atlanta in a few months. And I was like, I have no idea what I charge. Nobody's ever asked me. I called everyone I knew who had ever spoken in front of an audience, ended the business day, sent him a figure right in the middle of everything I had heard, and said, here's my proposal. And he got back, he said, great, we'll make plane reservations. And I thought, wait, what? And that was kind of how I stepped into what I do now. And the thing that really created it as a business for me was I had to own my own value. There's something that I just did naturally that I thought everyone did, and it wasn't a big deal because we often discount our own value. Even when someone says, you're really good at that, we say, oh, no, not really. Or that's nothing. That's not a big deal. Taking ownership of what you do well and then doing something with it is the first step to really bringing value to the world.
You know what it is that it's finally realizing who you really should be serving, right? So it's one thing, like to work in a news broadcast environment where you're always out going around, these are professionals, they're seasoned professionals, they've been on and did it. But then when you realize that so many more people need those same skills, and now you've been nominated to be the one to help them achieve it, I mean, that has got to be an awesome and amazing responsibility.
It is, and it does take some faith to step into those places, not because it's difficult to step into them or not that it's that big a deal. It's that we so often, again, discount our own value. We don't think it's a big deal, or we second guess, or we question it, or we self-doubt. And most of the time, it's so much easier when that stuff happens, because it's going to happen. It's so much easier to just say, well, never mind, forget about it. It does take a little extra step of faith to be able to go, let me give it a try. Because what if someone does need this, right? What if I put this on social media, not for me today, but because someone might need to hear that today, right? And how often do we stumble upon things and go, I needed to hear that today, thank you. That's about serving other people. It's not doing things for you. It's going, I can bring my value into the world so that other people can do amazing things. That's the goal. For so long as a speaker, I was thinking I want to be one of those, the biggies, right? We could name a whole bunch of them, but the biggies that go into the auditoriums and you have, thousands of people and stuff. And then I thought, no, you know what? The more I learned about who I was, I could shoot for that and maybe I would make it. But what I started realizing was I don't need to be the person who does the next amazing thing. I want to be the person behind the person who does the next amazing thing. I want to inspire and motivate people and let them see their worth. I want to do that so that multiple people can go out and do amazing things. And that really kind of became my passion at that point. And it's like, oh, it's not about me at all. I have to go put this out there so that people can be the best them that they can be.
I love that. It's like being the superhero that's going to single-handedly go and crush imposter syndrome, right?
Yes.
Just make people really figure out like, hey, and it's not just blowing sunshine away, right? It's not just saying, yeah, you're great, affirmations, go for it, right? This is really about, learning a skill and learning a skill that is that is frankly more needed today than at any other time ever, right? Because not only do we have multiple channels that we need to fill, right? Just within within our own websites and our own personal branding and company branding and things like that. But you also need to inspire. You need to give people a reason to believe, because people have way too much choice, right? It's like you get cable and you have 500 channels and all of them have commercials, and it's like, and then you have all the streaming services. It's like, there's so much competition for space in, which podcast people are going to listen to, which social media feed they're going to, they're going to read. How is all that going to work? There's so much competition that you really do need to learn to be remarkable and memorable, in order to pierce through that noise. And I don't care what industry you're in, right? You really do need to, whatever it is, whatever it is you decide to do, be a good one, right? And you really want to, put it out there and figure out, okay, what am I good at, and how am I gonna get people to believe me when I tell them that I'm really passionate about this, right?
I love that. And Jeff, you used a word there. I want to grab that and pull that back out again. You used a word, and it's memorable. And here's the thing. In this, you can put it in all kinds of different contexts. To your point, regardless of what you're trying to do or what you're selling or what industry you're in, right there is sort of the difference between, think we all have our phones, right? And we scroll and we scroll and we scroll and we scroll. Think about the things that make you stop. There are very few things that actually make you stop scrolling and grab your attention for a moment. And it might be because it's something silly or funny, right? If it makes me smile or laugh, we're going to grab it. It could be, again, a celebrity type thing or something, or news, something that everyone's talking about. So we stop on it because it's an in the moment thing. But 2 days from now, nobody's going to remember it because a million other things are going to have happened that caught everyone's attention and everyone's talking about. Oftentimes it's the thing that you needed to hear today. And you read or see something and you're like, I needed to see that. I needed to hear that, right? Whether it's, how many social media channels are about, good things that happen, right? You see the wonderful things in the world, or people doing things and taking care of each other. It's a little quote or just a word that hits you kind of, and you're like, yeah. There are very few things that make us stop. And when something makes us stop, it's often memorable. The reason is because it triggered something in us. It actually made us feel something. And, that, especially when you attribute that to business, when you can get beyond the product and the service and the info and trying to sell stuff and the specs and all of that stuff, and you can make people feel something by sharing, not selling, but sharing. Hey, do you have this situation in your life? Oh my goodness, look, let me actually show you how this works for that, instead of telling you all about how wonderful this product is for these situations. When you share, you make people feel. When you tell stories and put things in context, you make people feel. And anytime you can make someone feel, they're more apt to move to action. And so, when you use that overall in your life, the thing that is everything we're really talking about is, the bottom line is, there's only one thing all of us have in common. We're human. That's the only thing we have in common. And so anytime you can bring anything to a human standpoint, and that's why things like vulnerability and making mistakes and just being a real person, not worrying what everyone's thinking of you, that's what you need to do to get rid of those things, because those are all the things that make us human. And that's actually what pulls people in closer to you. That's what engages people. That's what makes people look at you and go, they're confident. They're trustworthy. They're believable. All the things that most people are afraid to bring in the mix, because we're kind of all putting up this front. Here's what I think I should look like or should sound like. Well, if you're doing what everyone else is doing, good luck standing out. You look and sound like everyone else. Being you and allowing yourself to be human, that's the game changer right there. That's really the game changer.
All right, so I want to shift gears here a little bit, because I don't want to go all life coachy,
Yeah.
right? And like, yeah, you're great, do all that affirmational stuff. That's great. I know a lot of people need them. I find that they don't necessarily work for me, right?
If
So I
you're not coupling them with action, nothing is going to work.
exactly,
Absolutely.
exactly. So, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about how you do this, right? Because it's one thing to say, yeah, just go out, be confident, you're great. Okay, yeah, great. Well, I don't feel it, right? So you know, how do you help people then actually achieve that? Like, one of the things, that you can do is, to really think about the overall goal of why you're gonna go up on stage or be on a podcast or whatever it is, right? But at the same time, you need to make sure that you are being effective, that you are being memorable, that you are conveying your message.
Mhm.
How do you help people through that? Because I have to imagine that there are a lot of people, like myself included, that do get that twinge of stage fright. Every single time, you turn on this camera, and you put a microphone in front of your face, it's like, oh my God, I got to go do this again. I have to be on, like, how do you do that? How do you help people through that process?
Yeah, so a couple of quick mindset shifts, and then we'll talk about the one big tip that I want to share today with you is, sometimes that mindset shift is huge. Just a little tiny tweak of how you're choosing to look at something can have a huge impact. So for example, if you say public speaking, many people immediately go, "Oh, don't like it, can't do it. I'm so nervous. I get anxious. I get overwhelmed. I get nervous. I get so many things. I don't like it. I don't do it well." But here's something you don't really think about. Every time you open your mouth every day of your life, you're public speaking. Not only that, you're doing it all ad lib. Your entire life is literally public speaking ad libbed. You don't have a script and you do it every day of your life and you do it perfectly fine. That's sort of what we call conversation mode, but you probably never thought of it as public speaking and completely off script. So when we move to presentation mode as opposed to conversation mode, the thing that is often so uncomfortable, two things about presentation mode is one, I have a script that I am telling myself I have to follow. And guess what? Our lives aren't scripted, so we're not comfortable with that. That's one of the most uncomfortable things. What if I forget what I was going to say? What if I forgot what was in my script, how I rehearsed it exactly the same way in the right order? What if someone sneezes and I look and I come back and I can't remember where I was? The having to adhere to a script is part of what's so uncomfortable about public speaking. So if you shift your mindset to go, okay, instead of writing a script, let me actually put this together, what I'm talking about, as more of a conversation with trigger points that I can put on my notes. Here's a word, here's a phrase, here's a number to remind me what the statistic is. It is so much easier to just talk. So that's one thing. The other thing that becomes really challenging for most people is the what I call the what are they going to think problem. And that's not about your script or content. What that's about is what's going on in this 6 inches of real estate between your ears. That is a dangerous place to be because if you think about it, when I say self-talk voice, I'm guessing everyone knows what I'm talking about. We all have that voice, right? You know what I'm talking about, Jeff?
Definitely.
Yeah, we
There.
all have that voice. Young, old, male, female, I don't care if you're the entry level sales kid or you're the CFO. Every human being has that voice. And is that voice usually kind and supportive, or is that voice a critical, almost bully sometimes?
It is the devil on your shoulder.
It is. It's that old cartoon, right? The devil and the angel. And this devil's voice is so much louder and so much more prevalent in our heads that it drowns this one out, right? We can never hear this one. So part of the thing with self-talk is usually we are thinking things that no one else looking at us is thinking. We are thinking of 100 things that we do not like about how we're showing up. We're so nervous. I don't like this. What are they thinking? What if they don't like me? What if I don't get the client? What does that person's face look like? I don't think they like what I'm saying. They're looking at their phone. They're not even paying attention. And we make it all about us. The person might be looking at their phone because they have a sick kid and they're trying to see if grandpa can pick him up at school. It has nothing to do with you, right? Get over yourself. The person with the weird look on their face isn't mad at you. This is just their face when they process information. It has nothing to do with you. We make everything about us. And one of the biggest things to remember when you're communicating, it's never about you, ever, right? If I'm communicating, it's because there's something you might need to know or something I can share that I know that might help you. What do you need from me? What can I share with you that you may or may not know, or how to use it, or give you a sounding board or something? Communication is not about me at all. So when we get up on a stage, so to speak, right, or click the button on the Zoom call, all of that stuff happening is coming from our heads. Because I guarantee nobody is thinking any of those things you're thinking about you. As a matter of fact, most of those people are in their own heads wondering what everyone's thinking about them. Half the time, they don't even know you walked into the room, right? And a quick analogy to show how off that is, if there were 100 people in a room and we took a picture of everybody and we passed it around, what would every single of those 100 people look at first?
They would look at
themselves.
Yeah, they'd look at the picture. Yeah.
They'd look at themselves. 99 people don't even exist. They're going to look for themselves. And their first thought is going to be, what's going on with my hair? Why did I wear that shirt? My eye is half closed. We're going to find all kinds of things wrong. 99 people don't even exist. And so our brains naturally go into this mode of, what will people think? And the reality is they're not thinking about that at all. So here's the big tip to help you get out of that. Because if you can shift that and get out of that mode and make that voice in your head your friend, all of a sudden it changes the ball game, because you get rid of the bully who's actually not outside of you and staring at you on the stage. The bully is inside your head. So let's get rid of that. So that negative self-talk voice, or that devil on the shoulder, right? Here's one of the ways that you can start to get rid of that voice quickly and gain more confidence and bring less stress to you when you're communicating. Give that self-talk voice a name. Now, I wouldn't name it someone you know. I mean, just pick a random name, right? So I'm going to say maybe Judy. Okay, we'll call Judy as my self-talk negative voice. What's going to happen is, just because I name that voice, I'm going to start to become a little more aware of when Judy's talking. And when Judy starts chiming in, two things are going to start to happen pretty quickly. One, because I've named that voice, it's going to start to separate it from my own. This is now Judy chattering at me and telling me I'm doing stuff wrong, not myself. Because when it's on autopilot, we don't even know it's happening half the time. So now I'm going to recognize that's Judy talking. The other thing I can do is, once I've separated Judy's voice, I can start talking back to Judy. I can start questioning Judy. So now when the voice comes in going, oh my goodness, I am totally bombing this, I can have a moment where I think, am I really Judy? As a matter of fact, I know my stuff. I'm sharing the stuff. People are asking questions. They seem engaged. Judy, I think you're full of it. I don't think you're telling me the truth. And even if so, who cares? I'm just going to do what I need to do in the moment. So we can tell Judy to sit down and can it. We can tell Judy, hey, you might have a valid point, but I don't have time right now to deal with this. Let's talk about this later. We can start to talk back to Judy and either validate or invalidate what she's saying. And that's huge, because when it's just us on autopilot, we believe everything we think. And it's really dangerous to believe everything you think. If you can take a moment and say, is that even true? No, that's not true at all. Or it's true and we're working on that. You've ended Judy's conversation. There's nowhere else for Judy to go. So the other thing that does is, in your head, it makes you, for a lot of people, the very first time, start to stand up for yourself in your own head. Because I'm not just buying what Judy's selling. I'm questioning Judy. I'm seeing if Judy's actually telling me the truth or if she's lying to me. And what happens is that positive voice, that stronger voice, that more confidence voice that doesn't, Judy questions me and fills me with self-doubt. That other voice that questions Judy builds up my self-confidence and my self-esteem, because I'm going, no, not buying it, or you're wrong. So by naming that self-talk voice, it helps you to build that confidence up and lower the stress, because the quieter Judy's voice gets and the louder this voice gets, all of a sudden you realize that your stress levels have gone from here to here, because Judy's not always poking the bear. Judy pokes and you're like, sit down. And Judy sits down, and now I can do what I need to do in the moment. And the more you do that, the more it becomes a habit. And over time, the easier it gets, to the point where that now becomes the loudest voice in your head. So that you step on stage and you're like, hey, it's not about me. What do they need from me? Let me share it with them.
So can it be said, so let's talk about Judy for a minute. So can it be said that maybe Judy, like may have a point, right? Maybe you're not doing the best presentation you could be doing. Maybe you didn't have all of your materials organized the best way that makes it, the most understandable. And so maybe some of that self-doubt, is there, and it's viable, and it's, and it's also actionable. At what point do you really just push that all to the side and just plow through? And at what point you're like, hey, wait a second, maybe Jody has a point. How does that work?
It's a great question. And the reality is, so part of it is the validating and invalidating it. Because a lot of times, if you start to become really aware of what you say to yourself in your head, and here's a you can do this, here's an actionable thing for your listeners, Jeff. Start to become aware of what you say in your own head. And start to listen to that conversation or that script. And there are some things that, if you stop and think about it, are so off from reality. They are just garbage thoughts. So sometimes it's quite obvious when you actually start paying attention and become aware of what that is. So those are things, just take the trash out, right? Some things, truly, it might be, whoa, you are so not prepared for this today. And if that's the truth, I'm just going to acknowledge the truth. You know what? Yep, we could have been a lot better prepared. But the key here is, Judy's not going to take over and snowball it and start going, yeah, so you're going to blow it. You're not even going to get this job. You're not going to get the gig. Because if there's one thought with Judy and I don't take over with the other voice, Judy's going to go until I feel defeated. And that's never going to help me trying to communicate anything, because that's all going to come out in behavior. But if I acknowledge Judy and say, you do have a valid point. Of course, yeah, we could have been a lot more prepared. Whoa. However, I am prepared as I am, right? Here's that human part. I can bring into the mix the fact that I don't have the answer to that question, but I know where to get it for you. Give me 10 minutes after this meeting and I'll have that for you. I'm allowed to say things like, I don't know, but I'm a great resource and I can go get it for you. You don't have to be afraid to say that. That's that human thing again. I don't know. That's one of the most confident things to say, but I can get it for you. So you can also walk in and if it's the truth, whoa, you know what? Joe was supposed to talk to you about this morning. I was told 2 hours ago that Joe isn't available and I'm going to come in. So I'm going to come right out right at the beginning. I am probably not as prepared with everything you want to discuss today. I know a lot about this. Let's talk about it. And know that if there's something you need from me, I'll get it to you as soon as we're out of this meeting. Could I start the meeting that way if I know that there's a legit reason I'm not prepared? So the idea here is Judy can bring in some valid points sometimes. However, Judy is never going to take over. Judy is going to become someone who points things out. That's it. Once she points things out, I'm going to take over and decide, is there something I need to do with that or not? Is it valid or not? Is it going to serve me in this moment or not? And if it's real, so what are my options? And one of the options is to be human and acknowledge that stuff up front, right? If I don't know a question, I can always open it to the group too. Wow, what a great question that is. What are your thoughts?
Who else here has experienced this?
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is that self-talk voice can paralyze us, because if it's only telling you negative things, it's going to get in the way. And when it gets in the way, you're not going to remember how you were going to talk about something. If you have things that you wanted to present a certain way, you're not going to remember. You're going to be nervous. It's going to constantly fill you with doubt, no matter how good you are or how often you've practiced. That voice will consistently question your ability to go out and do this well. And so when you quiet that voice down, all of a sudden, the stress levels come from here to here. Even if they come down a tiny bit, that's huge because everything can be done better when you're relaxed. So little things like that can make a huge difference. That self-talk voice, start to talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend, because we would never say things we'd say to ourselves to a friend. Talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend in every situation, and you will be amazed at how much the stress, the anxiety, the nerves, the overwhelm start to go into a context where it can bring you down to where you can now show up and do what you need to do well.
I love it. Thank you. That is such actionable advice. That's really something that you can really take and just, okay, this is what I got to work on today. And even if it's just, getting out a journal and just saying, hey, Jody, will you please shut the F up?
Right.
And just start with that. And, and then you can work on it from there, because, like when like you said, so when someone's poking the bear, you get nervous, you get flustered, and it can really sap your confidence, and it can be a big time waster as well. So
Yes.
I love that advice. Thank you so much for sharing that.
My pleasure. Again, thanks for the invite to share it.
Robin, can you please let everyone know how they can learn more about what it is that you do and how they can reach out to you directly?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Definitely, Jeff. So you see my website is on the screen there, robinjsachs.com. Or if you just Google Robin Sachs, you'll see a bunch of my stuff come up. If you go to my website, you can sign up for a free course. I don't spam you or do anything else. I might send you an occasional thing to say, hey, here's a tip or something little like that. But there's a free video course all about confidence that is a quick, nice thing, a few short videos, easy to digest anywhere you are. There are also a bunch of free videos. There's a blog with tons of free articles and things on it. So you can do that. I'm also on LinkedIn pretty much daily. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So feel free, follow me there. I, again, share constant tools, tips, things like that. My philosophy very much is, if you want, in business, if you want to show someone you can help them, don't tell them buy your course so you can help them. Go ahead and just help them. Because if you just go ahead and help them when they need or want more, they're going to be more apt to come to you because you helped them in the moment for that. So tons of videos, tons of stuff I share on there to do all the stuff that I've been talking about. And feel free, either on LinkedIn or the website, if you are looking for a coach or consultant, either with confidence or public speaking for yourself or your company, anything like that, feel free, reach out. I'd love to have a chat with you and see if I can help.
What a great mission. Thank you so much for sharing that. This has been a lot of fun. I really like the idea of, really digging in and figuring out, like, okay, this is the one thing that is holding me back from doing more public speaking, doing more lives, being, presenting more, things like that. And it's so actionable that you can actually go and just say, all right, I'm just going to kick Judy's ass and move it to the side.
Yeah. It's time to break up with Judy. Judy's not helping you. Just break up, kick her right off the bus. It's okay to do. And that's all about, again, start to become aware of what the conversation is in your own head, and then begin to manage the conversation. If you're rereading the same chapter over and over and over, turn the page and write a new chapter. Rewrite the script in your own head, because Judy or not, it's all you. So take control. That's your superpower.
Karen, Robin, thank you so much for joining me today. Jeez, I messed up the name. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time. This has been great advice, and just thank you for doing what you do.
You got it. My pleasure. And you didn't mess up the name, because Karen is probably my self-talk voice. So you were talking to her.
Have a great day. Thank you so much.
You too, Jeff. Take